All right, so we're going to look at the bias plus reports for the wild card weekend. We're going to kick this one off here, sir, with the Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. That was actually the last game of the weekend. The bias plus score of 0.5 actually favored the Eagles. We had some difficulty with this in my calculations early on. Initially, when I did this, it looked like it should be the Seahawks. Then it looked like the Eagles, and then it was the Seahawks.
Yes, ultimately.
Ultimately. So, what's your thoughts on this particular game?
Well, first of all, I went I went with the original bias plus that favored the Seahawks.
Favored the Seahawks, right?
So that's a win for me. Real funny thing, real quick, or maybe not so funny to some Eagles fans, is that the score was 17-9, which I believe was the score of the first time they played. The exact same score. Take it for what it's worth. Big game for the NFC East Division champion Philadelphia Eagles, who by that right earned the chance to host the game. Besides the fact that they've had all these injuries and playing with practice squad players and all this other stuff that I've heard over and over and over and over again, they were able to get into the playoffs and host a playoff game. Everything kind of seemed to be going their way. And this was a really tough call because it was well within the realm of possibility that the Eagles could win this game. In fact, they kind of seemed to have things going for them. The fact that they were playing with a lot of, injuries and practice squad players and second and third stringers, they had been doing it for a while. So some of these guys like Boston Scott, and then the emergence of Sanders when Howard went down, and Dallas Goedert starting to shine just in time for when Zach Ertz got hurt. And although he played, he obviously wasn't himself. So Goddard came up big in his spot. Things seemed to be going pretty well. And then all of a sudden, we had the big controversial play where Carson Wentz was hit helmet to helmet by Jadeveon Clowney. The hit, not only was it helmet to helmet, but it drove Wentz's head into the turf. And that's probably what really caused the concussion. He got up. He was obviously wobbly. I think he got off one more snap before they pulled him out. And most Eagle fans feel like their chances of winning that game went out when he went to the locker room and wasn't able to continue. I beg to differ. Yes, Josh McCown is old. Yes. But Josh McCown has been a decent, if nothing else, decent backup quarterback in this league for a long time. He's obviously been in the quarterback room and been in the scout rooms, yes, all over. But he's been with the Eagles the entire season. He knows the playbook inside and out.
He really does.
He knows the players.
He really does.
A lot of those backup guys he's been playing with in practice. Okay, so there's rapport. All right. He's obviously not Carson Wentz, but let's face it, he's an NFL quarterback. He's a viable backup NFL quarterback. I think he handled himself pretty well. He actually went 18 for 24. It was a meager 174 yards. And let's remember, folks, Wentz didn't go out in the mid-third quarter. He went out early. He went out in the first quarter. So McCown played almost the entire game. The problem is he got sacked 7 times. That's not his fault either. Maybe Wentz might have got away from 2 of those, but those guys, they turned the defensive line loose. And, again, you could talk about injuries to the offensive line, but this is the line you brought into the game, and they were not able to.
Did they lose somebody during the game too?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And then they bring Vitae in and stick him here and stick him there.
And they actually ran him a couple times. Like,
I'm not sure if they were running him or if he just looked downfield and was like, what?
It looked like a run.
I gotta get some positive
because I was sitting there going, what do y'all think y'all got playing back there? you know?
And that's why I think it might have been a rollout.
Your backup quarterback is a receiver who used to play quarterback after him.
Yeah, they didn't have a
Ward.
Well,
Ward,
remember,
right? Ward used to be
the guy. Yes, but the guy, the other real backup, and his name escapes me. Schofield,
Okay.
Something like that. He was injured in the preseason.
Right. Okay.
So he had a season-ending injury. Otherwise, he would have been the third-string quarterback. So they really only had 2 quarterbacks all season. It's tough. Kudos to Dallas Goedert. Kudos to Miles Sanders. 77 total yards. He did his part. Boston Scott had a couple nice runs. But try as they might, they were unable to sustain enough offense. The Seahawks defense pretty much shut them down in the second half. They had to settle for either giving the ball up or kicking field goals. But they still had an opportunity to win the game. They had 2 crucial penalties. Again, has nothing to do with Wentz playing or not playing. And when they decided to go for it on 4th down late in the game because they knew they needed at least 1 touchdown and then could possibly come back, stop them, come down, kick a field goal to tie it. They went for it on 4th down, and Miles Sanders simply dropped the ball. So that's why they lost the game, not because Carson Wentz got hurt. But what are you going to do?
So you're saying they had enough juice out of that quarterback to win the game? He definitely played well in the I was impressed with him in the preseason.
Their defense,
like he knows this.
Yeah, their defense held Seattle to 17 points, which is exactly what they were supposed to do. People who like the Eagles to win the game were saying the score's going to be 20-14, 27-17. So the defense did their part. They did what was expected.
Again, in a general sense, I agree with you. It's just that the crucial breakdowns, like that the last play with DK where they just sent him long and he catches the ball. You stop that play, different game. You got a chance, but then once he gets that, it's the clock. You're done. And that was kind of a gutsy call too. I mean, to throw the ball like that, you really had to have confidence that your receiver would beat that whatever matchups were out there, and you knew that they were lined up for the run. So they were that was the normal play.
Right,
so,
because the Seahawks had the lead, and they're thinking, they're going to milk the clock. We need to stop the run so we can get the ball back, and that's what happens when you don't put points on the board and turn the ball back over to the other team. You keep putting Russell Wilson on the field, it's going to happen sooner or later.
He's not the guy to keep putting on the field.
No,
believe me. From the NFC West, we know for sure.
Yeah, right.
All right, who's up next? Let's see what we got here. We have the Tennessee Titans. Oh, man. Okay.
Why?
End of an era, right? The hold on. Oh. This is the bias play. I was wondering why I was looking at the format. It was looking a little funny to me.
Okay.
And the Tennessee Titans were not favored to win. The Patriots were favored by a bias plus of 22.8 in this game. But because the Titans won by 7, they had a bias plus score of 29.8,
making them
the bias plus buster
of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good job, Tennessee Titans.
Man, let me tell you something. Something occurred to me during the game. Beside the fact that Derrick Henry was bulldozing these guys left and right?
Okay. The number 1 defense.
Yeah, number 1 defense, no doubt about it. But we all know on any given Sunday it's about matchups, and nobody's matching up to him at this point.
Nobody's matching up to the Tennessee offensive line either.
Yeah, they had a big part. But at a certain point in the game, I thought to myself, wait a minute. Ryan Tannehill, former Miami Dolphins quarterback.
Had a couple shots at the Patriots along the way.
Could this guy enough familiarity with the Patriots because he was in their division that his mindset is like, and you know, the Dolphins weirdly play well against the Patriots. I don't like even in their Super Bowl winning year last year, they wound up beating the Patriots right down at the end of the season.
We've seen them twice a year for the last few years. A little bit
of that Dolphins mystique there on the side of the Titans, man, and you know, and he's just playing like really efficient, good football right now. I mean, really, so much. You know, if you had two quarterbacks, you said, okay, you got Tom Brady or Ryan Tannehill. You know what I mean? Just it don't even sound like you should be talking about them in the same breath. But coming down the last few games of the season, he was way better.
Unless you said, would you rather have Tom Brady or Ryan Tannehill at the beginning of last week? Because Tannehill's the hot guy. Then you would get people thinking about making that choice. But nonetheless, he didn't have as great a game as I'm sure he hoped he would. He's more of a game manager.
Number one defense, so
right.
He's up again, so that's smart.
Right.
You know, I'd have been managing that game too.
Yeah. You
know,
he only threw 15 passes and completed 8 of them.
One of them was a really nice screen to Derrick Henry, which was
which I believe was Henry's only catch. 72 yards. He did throw a touchdown pass. But the story of the game was Derrick Henry. 34 carries. You heard me use the word bell cow, right? That he's the bell cow. He's the bull. 34 carries. And I'm watching the game, and you could tell that they were going to use him heavily. I love the way they were able to spell him just at the right times and just enough to keep him fresh, especially in the second half. Just enough to keep him fresh because they couldn't leave him out too long. You know what I mean? But it's a tribute to him being in the kind of shape that he's in, which is another discussion I had with somebody on Facebook. I had to let somebody know something about, you know, the difference between Derrick Henry when he first came in the league and Derrick Henry now. But 34 carries, 182 yards. He had the one catch. He did score a touchdown. That's a total of 204 yards. 204 yards from one dude, that's huge. He basically beat them by himself. Him and those offensive linemen basically beat the Patriots into submission. That's all there is to say. I don't even want to talk about the Patriots. I'm ready to move on to the other game. They're done, and I'm not going to say I don't want to talk about them because I'm glad that they're done. I'm saying they got beat into submission, and they don't deserve for me to go any further in that game because that's the story of the game.
Well, you know, again, you have a dominant player, and you go to that dominant player. The challenge for the Patriots in 2019/2020 is they lost their dominant player.
Right.
They went from a dominant player who, in Gronkowski, how big is he?
Oh, I don't know. He's like 6'6".
Like 6'6".
250 something.
And
270. I don't know.
Being their go-to guy, and then with him going, their new go-to guy. How big what's the little guy that catches all the balls?
Oh, Edelman?
Edelman. That's now their go-to matchup is Edelman.
The other big stat that I heard that I really, must be honest, was unaware of, Edelman led the league in drop passes. Good thing Nelson Agholor got hurt and missed some games.
That could be, you got to be careful with that a little bit because
what?
He gets volume.
Sure, he gets volume.
He might, in total drops, so he might have more, but I'm sure his volume is way higher than most. Because again, he was the go-to guy, and he's getting beat up. He's getting double teamed. You know, if you double team Gronk, it might not work. You might need a triple team because he's that much bigger and stronger than him. It's amazing he can defeat double team. For Edelman to defeat a double team, it's a great. I mean, he has to be somewhat amazing on an ongoing basis. which he is a lot of the times. But, I just think it could be his volume. We have to look that up. But long story short, that ended the reign of the Patriots for right now.
Yeah, and I got to give some credit to the Titans defense also. Brady really just couldn't get going. He couldn't get going.
They got a few things going. They got some runs in. They got some passes in. But, again.
Nothing that developed into anything
it's really
where
funny.
They can take over the momentum of the game.
When you look back and you look at some of the things that happened, you can usually point to one or two plays, go one way or the other, and all of a sudden the whole story seems to change.
Right.
I remember, during the season with my Niners, they lost the game, to the Ravens by like 3 points.
Right.
And I'm listening to the review of the game. You think they didn't do squat during the game. You know what I mean? From the way people talk about it. Because they lost.
Tell that they did, but
most people, but I'm saying if you're listening to the analysis.
Right, because they're focusing on the Ravens because they're so dynamic.
Yeah, and so, but you wouldn't realize that it was a missed field goal,
Right.
And who else had a missed? Oh, Saints. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, you ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, again, volume is my thought. I know he was injured, but you know what I kept thinking about? In baseball, the batter usually with the most home runs has like the highest number of strikeouts.
That happens quite often.
Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about. What did you find out?
Okay, so here's the thing, and I probably, if I had more time, could do more research and maybe extend this a little bit so we get a better understanding of it. But my point was, Edelman being the number one option on that team did have a lot of drop passes. I'm sure volume had something to do with it. So I took a look. Of the top 5 guys who dropped the most passes, 2 of them are running backs. If you just look at wide receivers and the number of targets that they had, Edelman was 5th.
Not bad out of 32 teams.
So that's not bad. But the thing is, the 4 guys that were targeted more than him are really low on the drops. So, yes, volume has something to do with it. Yes,
who are the guys?
Injuries
targeting more than him.
Oh, we're talking about Hopkins, Julio, Michael Thomas.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. They don't drop. They don't drop balls.
A lot.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the next game from last week. And the Minnesota Vikings going into Saints Stadium. 2 dome teams, bias plus score 4.8 favorite. The Saints.
Unbelievable. I don't know what to call it. Bad luck, karma. I don't know what's going on here. But the Saints had the bias plus, right? I picked the Saints. They were home. They were hot. They were crazy hot. In the last 4 games before that game was played, Drew Brees had 15 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in 4 games. You don't get no hotter than that. That's hotter than Tannehill. That's crazy. But in that game, 26 for 33, which isn't bad, but only 208 yards. That means a lot of checkdowns.
Yeah, especially for throwing that many times.
Right. He only threw 1 touchdown pass, and he did have an interception. And he did lose a fumble. I think it was on a sack. That's crazy. You look at Kamara, who looked like he was coming out of his little funk. And when I talk about a funk for Alvin Kamara, I'm talking about all those great breakaway runs we normally see from him have been very limited this season, but they seem to be coming back in the last couple of games of the season. He ran the ball 7 times. He only had 21 yards. He did score a touchdown, but he caught 8 passes. So that's some of those checkdowns for Brees. So that kind of explains that. But then of those 8 catches, he only had 34 yards. So again, kudos to the Vikings defense.
Yeah.
They just couldn't quite get going,
I think the speed of the Vikings defense was a little surprising to them. I don't think they quite thought that they were going to be able to match.
Yeah, when you see games like you like this, you kind of wonder, like, what? I can't believe that an NFL coaching organization is going to take a team lightly. You know what I mean? when you're game planning during the week for this squad and you're looking at film and stuff, you're going to look at what they do really well. You're going to try to find some things where they're weak at. You're going to try to go at their weaknesses and things like that. But I just got the feeling during this game like the Saints really felt superior and were caught off guard that the Vikings defense was able to make the plays that they were able to make. Michael Thomas caught 7 passes, 70 yards. He was unable to score, but he didn't have a lot of touchdowns this year anyway, to tell you the truth. He had a tremendous number of catches, broke a record, single season record. It just quite wasn't enough. Personally, I think they should have used Latavius Murray more, because he's the change of pace back. He's the power back. If you can't break Kamara loose, you bring Murray in, you bully ball a little bit, But since Murray took over for Ingram, they don't really use him like they used to use Ingram. I thought that was the idea when they brought him over, but for some reason they haven't done it. I don't know what to say about that. So that's part of the reason they lost the game. The other part of the reason they lost the game, the main reason was Mr. Dalvin Cook coming back off a shoulder injury.
Now we getting to the essence of the deal.
Okay. Did a Derrick Henry on these boys.
Dalvin Cook was dashing past people.
28 carries. Okay. Not as many as Derrick Henry, but doggone near. If a running back gets 20 carries, that's what you want a good running back to get. 20 carries and over 100 yards to win the game is kind of your
5-yard carry.
Exactly. 28 carries, 94 hard yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a big deal. But in the second half, after a very quiet first half, Mr. Kirk Cousins came through, and not all in the second half, but he hit Adam Thielen 7 times and a couple of those catches were humongous for 129 yards. And Thielen, another guy who's been hurt almost all season, came up really big. So that iced it.
I wrote short pieces on all of the wild card games, and those were the 2 names that I mentioned as having a real potential to change the narrative, to swing things into the Vikings' favor.
Okay.
Because Dalvin, again, other than Derrick Henry, he'd have been the number 1 rusher.
Yeah.
And Adam Thielen, right?
Thielen, yes.
Thielen, I'm going to say his name right. Just a clutch type guy. And he's that guy, every quarterback has that guy who he
just seems to have that connection
with and that trust. And he, and he's that guy.
Yep.
That guy was Cooper Kupp for the Rams, for example.
Right.
When he's out the game, things just didn't seem to function as well. And so that had an effect. But yeah, I thought that those 2 had a big impact. And like you said, Kurt went deep on them. They only came up big on some catches.
Yeah, 2 specific long balls that he threw to him. He fell down on both of them, but those were as close to perfect passes as you can throw. The only thing that would have made him perfect was if he actually hit him in stride and he was able to keep running. But he put the ball only where he could get it, and he did what he had to do to catch it or catch them. That pretty much got the job done.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next game in the wild card weekend. Did we talk about Buffalo Texans?
No, that's the one.
Woo!
No, we got a lot to talk about in this game. Holy smokes!
By a score of 7.8 favorite Buffalo. Houston was the only team going into playoffs that had a negative net point number. I wrote a piece on this, and the thing that I said was that this will be interesting because you have 2 young but maturing quarterbacks. One showed his maturity, the other showed his immaturity. Go ahead.
The crazy thing is, some of the crazy things that Josh Allen did had the potential to hurt them really badly, but somehow they got out of it. And all you could do was shake your head like, dude, don't you ever do that again.
Like the pitch out to the,
yeah.
You know, the guy was smart enough to knock it out of bounds.
Yeah, that was crazy. But, yeah, Josh Allen didn't have the greatest game, but he had a pretty good game.
He started out good. His
Statistically,
first half
right.
really
well, that's
good.
what I'm saying. His stats look good because his first half was darn near flawless.
You know what was funny? He took off on that design run.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he's running down and he starts running.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, Lamar's not going to get caught.
No. Not if he breaks away like that.
He was rolling full speed. And I'm like, no, he's not going to make it.
Talk about the runs. He ran the ball actually 9 times for 92 yards. That's tremendous. That's tremendous. He scored a touchdown on a reception. Kind of looked like a little makeshift Philly. And he threw the ball for 264 yards. But, and also let me mention Devin Singletary, 13 carries, 58 yards, 6 catches for 76. So here's the problem. Here's a small problem. It started back early in the season when they got Devin Singletary in the draft. He was supposed to come in and work his way into being the number 1 running back. But they brought Frank Gore in to be that veteran guy. And for some reason, and it may have been Singletary's fault, maybe he didn't grasp the playbook like he was supposed to. Maybe he didn't practice like he was supposed to. Maybe he showed something that made them lean heavily during the regular season until darn near the last quarter of the regular season, continue to lean heavy on Frank Gore. But once they turned Devin Singletary loose, he proved that he's ready to ascend to the number 1 running back on that team. He's a good player, and he's smaller than he kind of looks when you look at him in TV. I think he's only a 5'8". You know, he's kind of like a little bowling ball. He's got good speed, and he's got good hands, as evidenced by his 6 catches for 76 yards. However, the Texans have a magician, and that's Deshaun Watson. 20 for 25, 247. He threw 1 touchdown, but he ran the ball 14 times for 55 and had another touchdown on the ground, and he ran in a 2-point conversion, a huge 2-point conversion. These 2-point conversions, they had 2 2-point conversions that they converted in that game that probably, the final score was 22-19. Those are big. It makes me think back, and we may have had a discussion about certain teams that use the 2-point conversion more than others, okay? When I look at that, I'm like, man, I got to use the 2-point conversion more often. You know, the thing is, when you go for it and you don't get it, especially if you're coming from behind, you feel like it kind of hurts you. But if you do use it when you're coming from behind and you get it, it's a big lift.
It's funny. Hey, we did talk about it in a number of different ways when we go back to the AAF in the preseason when we were watching.
That was crazy. Yeah, you were supposed to go for it.
They had to. There was no kick.
There was no kick.
They had to go to it. And we said then that because of that, they had a lot of different goal line plays.
Yes.
They were prepared.
They had entire packages.
They had a package of goal line plays. And so if you're going to follow that philosophy, you really do. And it really helps to have a quarterback who's mobile, to run an option, and they have all of those things, going for you. I know in my game when I'm playing, especially in the beginning, if I score first, I'm not going for 2. I'm going to get that extra 1, make it a full touchdown, because you have to play based on the different scorings. Do I need a field goal? Do I need a touchdown? Do I need a 2-point conversion? I got a safety. Now I got to change what I'm thinking, in terms of the unit of scoring that I need to make sure that I get to,
Right.
That's why a 9-point lead is like a killer because, a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, I ain't going to get it,
Right.
So, yeah, he is. And Deshaun Watson, what was it, the last play or whatever that he got off where this is the second or third time we've seen him just magically escape guys and break out and Booker kept saying they're going to need to they don't need to spy him or something. Some particular point they need to do something because they had who's the guy from the Buffalo Bills, their linebacker, and because he kept comparing him to the Bears Urlacher, and he's like Urlacher's size.
Not Kiko Alonso.
No. It's he's like a middle linebacker for the Bills.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he's got the braids and all of that kind of stuff. We'll look his name up.
Okay.
But speed, size, I mean, so he gave them a lot. He gave them a lot in that game. But, Deshaun is.
Here's the thing. The Bills defense, I think, although they made some errors, played pretty well. They sacked him 7 times. They sacked Deshaun 7 times. He does hold the ball too long. The crazy thing is they sacked him 7 times, and if they had made it 8, they probably would have won the game. Because that play, he got away from 2 guys that had clean shots on him, spun out of it, completed the pass, and then the guy caught the ball and ran it for 30-something yards and got him in field goal position, and they kicked the game-winning field goal. So, yeah, they sack him there. They maybe force him to punt, get the ball back, and they could still win after their offense going in complete hibernation in the second half. The Bills, I don't understand how they could start the game off so efficiently on offense and be so inept in the second half of the game. It's not like the Texans defense is that good. It's not like they were doing anything really different that I could see. I got to blame that one on the coaches. I don't know exactly what happened. It's kind of crazy. But
sometimes it's just a sense of urgency. One team catches that a sense of urgency and makes plays. For example, they hadn't really been getting the ball, the Texans, to the number 1 receiver, right? Then all of a sudden they started.
Getting the ball to him. Yeah. What did Hopkins have? 6 catches, 8 targets, 90 yards. So now 8 targets is actually low for him. He's usually a 10, 12 target guy.
The thing about that, though, is are they crucial targets, third down conversions and things like that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
the number doesn't matter if you're moving the sticks.
Sometimes, and if that was 9 first downs, for example, that's super big. I'm not saying it was, but that's kind of what I saw happen. And all of a sudden, he started getting the ball. And also, you have Carlos Hyde.
I know.
Bad.
I talked bad about him, though. I didn't say they didn't have a running game. What I said for the last couple of weeks was a mediocre running game. So, Carlos Hyde, 16 carries, 42 yards, 48 yards, but he did catch a touchdown. I mean, you put points on the board. I don't care if you only gain 5 yards.
Right.
If you have a 1-yard touchdown and a 4-yard touchdown, that's a good game.
If you get anywhere near the goal line and you got somebody you can turn around and hand the ball off to,
right.
Right.
So they did what they had to do. I'm not going to say they didn't deserve to win. They did what they had to do. They scored 20-something, almost 20 unanswered points in the second half.
It's funny. I had 2 former Niners at running back on each team, or one on each team.
Oh, Hyde and Gore?
Hyde and Gore.
Yeah, well, Hyde came through. Gore's just about done.
Yeah, Gore.
I got to stick a fork in him.
What did we say? What was our old joke? When he says to the coach, if you need 3 yards, I can get you 3 yards.
I can get you 3.
If you need 4 yards,
I can get you 3 yards.
That's
Gore. Yeah, that's where we're at.
You gotta love that guy, man. Just to be out there. I mean, that's some hardcore football love or love of money or something, because his whole body has been redone.
Yeah.
I think the only thing he hasn't had rearranged is his brain, and he might have had that rearranged in a couple of hits. But he seems very lucid at this particular point, and he's still going. But I would think this is his last year.
Yeah.
All right.